The conductor's shadow, Elise Whitley, smoothed the invisible wrinkles from her midnight blue dress, a nervous habit that persisted despite the garment's perfect tailoring. The grand ballroom of the Westbrook Hotel buzzed with Silicon Valley's elite, CEOs, venture capitalists, and tech visionaries whose combined net worth could fund a small nation. Among them, her husband Vincent commanded attention like gravity, pulling people into his orbit with practiced charm and calculated charisma. "There you are," Vincent said, materializing beside her with 2 champagne flutes. His tone carried the faintest edge of irritation. "The Goldmans were asking about you. I told them you were probably powdering your nose. Again." Elise accepted the champagne with a practiced smile. "I was actually speaking with Professor Hammond about his research in sustainable energy. It's fascinating how his team is revolutionizing battery storage." Vincent's eyebrows lifted slightly before his attention drifted to someone over her shoulder. Oh, that's nice, darling. There's Judith Peterson. We need her support on the board. Come along." Before she could finish her thought, Vincent's hand pressed against the small of her back, steering her toward a severe-looking woman in a crimson pantsuit. This was the choreography of their marriage, Vincent leading, Elise following in perfect step. "Judith." "Magnificent event," Vincent boomed. "Have you met my wife, Elise? She does wonderful work with—" "What was it again, dear? The children's literacy thing?" "Women in STEM education," Elise corrected softly. Right. Anyway, Judith, about that voting bloc you control." Elise felt herself fade into the background as Vincent and Judith launched into corporate politics. She'd grown accustomed to this vanishing act, becoming wallpaper in rooms where her husband shone like a spotlight. At 34, Elise had spent 7 years as Mrs. Vincent Whitley, trophy wife to the founder and CEO of Horizon Technologies. Her degrees from MIT and Stanford Business School were reduced to footnotes in her biography, overshadowed by charity luncheons and being the perfect hostess. "What do you think, Elise?" Judith's question snapped her back to the conversation. "I'm sorry, about what exactly?" Elise asked. Vincent laughed too loudly. "See what I mean? Always daydreaming? Don't worry your pretty head about these boring business matters, sweetheart." He patted her arm condescendingly. "Elise is more suited to planning galas than parsing quarterly reports, aren't you, dear?" The familiar sting of humiliation warmed her cheeks. Judith offered a sympathetic smile that somehow felt worse than Vincent's dismissal. "Actually," Elise began, "regarding the Asian market expansion—" "Oh, look," Vincent interrupted. "There's Governor Nichols. We absolutely must say hello. Excuse us, Judith." As Vincent guided her away, Elise caught the reflection of their perfect couple image in a mirrored column. Him tall and commanding in his bespoke suit, her petite and elegant in designer couture. What the reflection couldn't show was how hollow she felt inside, how the constant diminishment had carved out spaces within her that once held confidence and ambition. Later that night, as Vincent's assistant Thomas drove them home, her husband reviewed emails on his tablet, occasionally muttering about incompetence and missed opportunities. "I'm thinking of consulting on a project," Elise said quietly as they turned onto the private road leading to their estate. What kind of project?" Vincent asked without looking up. "A renewable energy initiative with Professor Hammond's team. They need someone with my background in systems optimization." Vincent finally glanced at her, his expression bemused. "Darling, you haven't worked in that field for years. Besides, we have the Bennett Foundation dinner next month, and you know how much planning these things require." "I can manage both," Elise insisted, her voice barely audible over the purr of the luxury car's engine. Vincent patted her knee. "Let's be realistic. These tech boys don't want someone who's been out of the game playing in their sandbox. Focus on what you're good at." The car stopped at their front entrance, and Vincent was immediately on his phone again, stepping out without waiting for her. Elise lingered in the vehicle, meeting Thomas's eyes in the rearview mirror. "For what it's worth, Mrs. Whitley," Thomas said softly, "I remember your thesis on adaptive algorithms. It was brilliant." Elise blinked in surprise. "You read my thesis?" "Before working for Mr. Whitley, I was studying computer science. Your work was revolutionary. The industry lost something special when you stepped away." Something small and warm flickered in Elise's chest, a spark long dormant, suddenly catching oxygen. She smiled genuinely for the first time that evening. "Thank you, Thomas. Perhaps it's not too late to find it again." Crescendo in secret. The morning sunlight streamed through the bay windows of Elise's home office, a space Vincent jokingly called her hobby room. While he believed she used it primarily for coordinating charity events and managing their social calendar, the room had become her sanctuary over the past 18 months. "Dr. Whitley, your analysis of the neural network implementation is spot on," said Dr. Fiona Reeves, her face framed in the video conference window on Elise's monitor. "The team at Lumina Labs is impressed with your consultation work." Elise tucked a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. "Thank you, Fiona. I've emailed you my additional recommendations for optimizing the algorithm. I believe you could improve efficiency by 23% with minimal structural changes. This is why we need you on board permanently," Fiona urged. "Your work under your maiden name, Elise Chen, is creating quite a buzz in the field. People are asking who this brilliant consultant is who seemingly appeared out of nowhere." Elise smiled, feeling the familiar thrill of intellectual recognition, something she'd nearly forgotten during her years as Vincent's shadow. "I appreciate the offer, but the consulting arrangement works best for me right now." After ending the call, Elise checked her watch. She had 3 hours before she needed to transform back into Mrs. Vincent Whitley for an investor dinner. 3 hours to be Dr. Elise Chen, the woman whose journal articles were now being cited by leading researchers and whose consulting insights had helped 3 startups secure significant funding. The double life had begun innocently enough. When Professor Hammond had reached out after their conversation at last year's charity gala, Elise had agreed to review his team's research as a favor. That small step had awakened something dormant within her, the analytical mind that had once earned her academic accolades and industry respect before she'd set it aside for marriage. Using her maiden name had been practical at first, a way to separate her work from Vincent's sphere of influence. Now it felt like a shield protecting the fragile new identity she was cultivating. Vincent remained oblivious, assuming her increased time on the computer related to the children's coding initiative she chaired, the one charitable cause he deemed appropriately technical for his wife to champion. Elise opened her secure email to find a message from Julian Blackwood, CEO of Lumina Labs and a direct competitor to Vincent's Horizon Technologies. The subject line made her pulse quicken. "Potential acquisition, confidential." "Dr. Chen," the email began, "your consulting work has transformed our approach to adaptive learning systems. I'd like to discuss bringing you on as Chief Innovation Officer as we prepare for a major market expansion. Additionally, we're exploring acquisition opportunities and value your strategic insight. Are you available for a confidential meeting next week?" Elise leaned back in her chair, mind racing. Working directly for a competitor would cross a line she hadn't yet contemplated. Yet the opportunity to lead innovation at Lumina was everything she'd once dreamed of before meeting Vincent at that fateful tech conference 8 years ago. Her phone buzzed with a text from Vincent. "Wearing the blue suit tonight. Wear something that complements it. The Samuelsons will be there. He's considering a $50,000 investment." Elise sighed and closed the email, saving her response for later. She had just enough time to review the quarterly reports Vincent had dismissed her interest in last week. Though he didn't know it, Elise had maintained access to Horizon's financial data through Thomas, who had become an unlikely ally in her secret renaissance. The reports confirmed what she'd suspected. Horizon was struggling. Vincent's reluctance to adapt their core technology was causing them to lose ground to more innovative competitors, including Lumina Labs. As she dressed for dinner that evening, selecting a steel blue gown that would complement Vincent's suit while allowing her to fade into the background as expected, Elise considered the irony of her situation. The wife Vincent dismissed as intellectually inconsequential now held insights that could save or sink his company. "You look acceptable," Vincent commented as she descended the stairs. His idea of a compliment had deteriorated over the years. "Remember, the Samuelsons are old school. Traditional values. Play up the supportive wife angle." "Of course," Elise replied, slipping into the role as easily as she'd slipped into her designer heels. Though Mr. Samuelson might be interested in my perspective on the children's coding initiative. It aligns with his foundation's focus on education. Vincent checked his watch impatiently. Maybe. Just don't monopolize the conversation with charity talk. We need his investment, not his philanthropy. At dinner, Elise performed her role flawlessly, smiling at the right moments, asking Mrs. Samuelson about her grandchildren, and remaining silent as Vincent detailed Horizon's prospects with carefully curated optimism that Elise knew masked serious problems. "Mrs. Whitley," Mr. Samuelson said unexpectedly, turning to her during dessert, "my granddaughter participated in your coding workshop last month. She hasn't stopped talking about it." "Quite impressive what you've built there." Vincent looked momentarily startled before recovering. "Yes, Elise does have a knack for these little projects." "Little?" Mr. Samuelson raised his eyebrows. "From what I understand, the program has reached over 5,000 girls nationwide and developed a curriculum being adopted by school districts in 3 states. That's hardly small scale." Elise felt Vincent's gaze shift to her with new awareness. "I wasn't aware it had grown so substantially," he said carefully. "It's been a team effort," Elise replied modestly, though inside she savored the moment of recognition. Later that night, after Vincent had fallen asleep, Elise returned to her office and opened Julian Blackwood's email. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she contemplated her response. The path before her forked in 2 distinct directions: continue her shadow, existence, or step into the light with all the consequences that would entail. She thought of Vincent's dismissive pat on her head earlier when she'd attempted to discuss Horizon's technical challenges. "Let the men handle the complicated stuff," he'd said with a condescending smile that made her stomach knot. Decision made, Elise began typing her response to Julian, agreeing to the meeting. As she worked, she also drafted a proposal addressing Horizon's vulnerabilities, a comprehensive strategy that could save Vincent's company from its impending crisis. Not because she owed him, but because despite everything, a part of her still cared what happened to him. As dawn broke over Silicon Valley, Elise finally went to bed, her mind quieter than it had been in years. The time for silence was coming to an end. She just needed to choose the right moment for her voice to be heard. The first note. The Fairmont Hotel's grand ballroom glittered with San Francisco's tech aristocracy gathered for the annual Innovation Awards. Under crystal chandeliers, conversations about mergers, valuations, and disruptive technologies flowed as freely as the champagne. Elise sat at Horizon Technologies' premium table, watching Vincent work the room with his signature charismatic efficiency. "You're unusually quiet tonight," noted Regina Winters, wife of Horizon's CFO. Though Elise knew the observation was ironic, quietness was precisely what everyone expected of her. "Just taking it all in," Elise replied with a practiced smile. What Regina couldn't know was that beneath Elise's calm exterior, a storm was brewing. Earlier that day, she'd met with Julian Blackwood of Lumina Labs, who had offered her not just the Chief Innovation Officer position, but a partnership stake in the company. More significantly, Julian had revealed that Lumina was positioning for a hostile takeover of Horizon, targeting its weakened financial position, a vulnerability that Vincent continued to deny publicly and privately. "Ladies and gentlemen," the evening's host announced, "please welcome to the stage Mr. Vincent Whitley, CEO of Horizon Technologies, to present the Breakthrough Technology Award." Applause rippled through the room as Vincent approached the podium, confidence emanating from him like a force field. Elise watched her husband with conflicted emotions, pride in what he'd built, frustration at what he'd become, and sadness for what their relationship had deteriorated into. "Before I announce the winner," Vincent said after his opening remarks, "I'd like to acknowledge my wife, Elise, whose unwavering support has been my secret weapon." He gestured toward her with a practiced smile. "Stand up, darling. Let them see the woman who makes sure I remember to eat during those 70-hour work weeks." Polite laughter followed as Elise rose briefly, accustomed to these moments of being acknowledged not for her mind, but for her supportive presence. She resumed her seat as Vincent continued. Though between us, her greatest technological achievement is figuring out how to program our home entertainment system. More laughter, sharper this time. Elise felt her cheeks warm, not with embarrassment, but with a slow-building anger. Beside her, Thomas, who had accompanied them as Vincent's assistant, shifted uncomfortably. After presenting the award, Vincent returned to their table, immediately engaging with a potential investor. Elise excused herself and headed toward the ladies' room, needing a moment alone. In the elegant marble sanctuary, she stared at her reflection, barely recognizing the woman who gazed back. Dr. Chen? A woman emerged from one of the stalls. Dr. Naomi Washington, one of the most respected AI researchers in the country. I thought that was you. I've been hoping to meet you in person. Your paper on recursive learning models was revolutionary. Elise glanced around instinctively, worried about being overheard. Thank you, Dr. Washington, but I go by Whitley in these circles. Naomi's eyes widened with realization. You're Vincent Whitley's wife. But you're also Dr. Elise Chen? The entire research community has been trying to figure out who you are. It's complicated, Elise admitted. Does your husband know that his wife is the anonymous consultant who's been reshaping AI implementation strategies across the industry? No, Elise said softly. He doesn't. Naomi studied her with newfound interest. That must be quite a balancing act. Your work on Lumina's new platform alone would be— Please, Elise interrupted. I'd appreciate your discretion. Of course, Naomi nodded, though her expression remained puzzled. But may I ask why? Your work deserves recognition. The question hung in the air as the bathroom door opened and Regina entered. Elise, there you are. Vincent's looking for you. The Peterson Group wants to discuss your children's coding initiative. Returning to the ballroom, Elise found Vincent in animated conversation with Walter Peterson. Ah, here she is, Vincent announced as she approached. Walter's interested in your little project, darling. It's hardly little, Walter corrected. My tech team tells me your adaptive learning platform could revolutionize how coding is taught nationwide. Vincent's smile faltered slightly. Adaptive learning platform? I thought it was just workshops and some basic curriculum. It began that way, Elise said, her voice stronger than usual. But we've developed proprietary software that adjusts to each student's learning patterns. We've seen a 90% retention rate compared to traditional methods. Walter looked impressed. That's remarkable. Would you consider licensing the technology, or perhaps a partnership with Peterson Educational Division? Before Vincent could interject, Elise continued. We're actually preparing to scale independently, but I'd be happy to discuss collaboration opportunities. The algorithm has applications beyond coding education. Vincent stared at her with an expression somewhere between confusion and annoyance. I wasn't aware the initiative had progressed to this level, he said, his tone carrying a warning. There's quite a bit happening beneath the surface, Vincent, Elise replied, meeting his gaze steadily. The tension between them was interrupted by the evening's host announcing the Visionary Leadership Award, for which Vincent was a nominee. As expected, when his name was called as the winner, Vincent's irritation with Elise dissolved into triumph. He kissed her cheek perfunctorily before striding to the stage. Thank you for this honor, Vincent began his acceptance speech. At Horizon, we've always believed in looking beyond the horizon. The rehearsed humility in his voice made Elise cringe slightly. Success requires vision, determination, and occasionally, making difficult decisions that others might not understand or support. Elise tensed. Recognizing the veiled reference to Horizon's recent layoffs, a desperate, cost-cutting measure that Vincent had publicly framed as strategic restructuring, but privately admitted was necessary to mask declining revenues. Sometimes, leadership means standing alone, Vincent continued. My wife, bless her heart, often tells me I should delegate more. He chuckled, prompting audience laughter. But as she'll be the first to admit, understanding the complexities of what we do at Horizon requires a certain technical aptitude that not everyone possesses. The condescension in his voice was subtle but unmistakable. Across the table, Naomi Washington caught Elise's eye with a raised eyebrow. Something shifted inside Elise, a final thread snapping after years of tension. She thought of the acquisition documents Julian had shown her, revealing how vulnerable Horizon truly was. She thought of Vincent's desperate maneuvering to conceal the company's weaknesses. She thought of how, in her secret identity as Dr. Chen, she had already drafted solutions that could save Horizon, if only Vincent would listen. As Vincent concluded his speech to enthusiastic applause, Elise made her decision. The time for silence had ended. Not for revenge, not for recognition, but because remaining quiet now would harm not just her, but everyone connected to Horizon, from investors to employees who had no idea their jobs were at risk. When Vincent returned to the table, basking in accolades, Elise leaned close to him. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "Tonight. About Horizon's vulnerability to acquisition and what can be done to prevent it." Vincent's smile froze. "What are you talking about?" "I know about the quarterly losses, Vincent. I know about Lumina's plans, and I know how to stop them, if you're willing to listen." Vincent stared at her as though seeing her for the first time, confusion and the first flickers of alarm crossing his face. "How could you possibly—" "I have the technical aptitude," Elise said, rising from her seat. "More than you've ever realized." Harmony disrupted. The drive home from the Innovation Awards unfolded in tense silence. Vincent gripped the steering wheel of his Aston Martin, knuckles white, occasionally glancing at Elise as if she'd transformed into a stranger before his eyes. In many ways she had. "How long?" he finally asked as they passed through the security gate of their Woodside estate. "How long what?" Elise replied, though she understood perfectly. "How long have you been working behind my back? Consulting with my competitors? Accessing confidential Horizon information?" His voice rose with each question. "I never consulted with competitors until recently," Elise said calmly, "and I've never shared Horizon's confidential information with anyone. But I've been working independently for nearly 2 years now." Vincent parked abruptly in front of their home, turning to face her. "As Dr. Elise Chen? Hiding behind your maiden name while I supported you?" "I wasn't hiding, Vincent. I was finding myself again." Elise stepped out of the car, walking toward the house with measured strides. "And I support myself quite well with my consulting fees. The irony is that companies pay substantial amounts for my expertise while you've dismissed it daily for free." Inside their sprawling living room, Vincent poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, downing it in one swallow. "So what's your play here? Blackmail? Leverage? You want a position at Horizon? Is that it?" Elise sighed, placing her clutch on the marble countertop. "This isn't a negotiation tactic. It's a wake-up call. Horizon is vulnerable because you've refused to evolve the core technology. Lumina isn't just planning an acquisition. They're planning to dismantle Horizon and absorb its client base." "And how exactly would you know Lumina's plans?" Vincent's eyes narrowed. "Because they offered me a partnership position yesterday. Julian Blackwood values my input more than you ever have." Vincent's laugh was harsh. "Julian Blackwood is using you to get to me. That's all this is." "No, Vincent. Julian offered me the position because of my work as Dr. Chen, before he knew I was your wife." Elise moved to her office, returning with a tablet. "Here's my portfolio. Publications, patents filed, consulting clients. All in the last 2 years while you thought I was just planning galas and charity luncheons." Vincent scrolled through the files, his expression shifting from dismissive to confused to something approaching respect as he recognized names of prestigious journals and major tech companies. "This is actually impressive," he admitted reluctantly. "The adaptive learning platform Walter Peterson mentioned tonight? I developed that algorithm. It's already being implemented in 200 schools nationwide." Elise sat across from him, maintaining eye contact. "I've created a parallel career while you weren't looking because you never bothered to really see me." Vincent set down the tablet, rubbing his temples. "So what now? You're leaving? Taking Julian's offer? Is that what tonight's revelation was about?" "No," Elise said softly. "Despite everything, I don't want to see Horizon fail. Too many people depend on it, including you." She reached for her tablet, opening another file. "This is my proposal for restructuring Horizon's technology division and repositioning the company ahead of Lumina's move. We have approximately 3 weeks before they initiate proceedings." Vincent stared at her. bewilderment evident in his expression. "Why would you help me after how I've treated you?" "I'm not just helping you. I'm helping everyone at Horizon who would lose their jobs. And," she added with a small smile, "proving that I'm exactly the woman you should have been listening to all along." The following week transformed their lives in ways neither could have anticipated. Vincent, after initial resistance, brought Elise's proposal to Horizon's board, presenting it as a collaborative effort rather than admitting it was primarily her work. The board unanimously approved the restructuring plan, impressed by its comprehensive approach to Horizon's technological stagnation. What Vincent hadn't expected was the board's insistence on meeting the mysterious consultant who had drafted the technical aspects of the proposal. "They want to meet Dr. Chen," Vincent told Elise one evening, his tone a mixture of resignation and irony. "Apparently her reputation precedes her." "And what did you tell them?" Elise asked. "I told them I'd arrange it." He hesitated. "Elise, I need you to take this position seriously. If the board discovers I've been dismissing my own wife's expertise while Horizon floundered..." "You want me to help you save face," Elise summarized. "I want us to present a united front," Vincent corrected. "For both our sakes." Elise considered his request. "I'll meet with the board as Dr. Chen, not as your wife. If they make the connection, so be it. But I won't pretend this was a joint effort all along." Vincent nodded slowly. "Fair enough. The board meeting is Thursday." He paused, studying her with new eyes. "You know, I keep thinking about all those events where I cut you off or made jokes at your expense." "All while you were building this whole other life." "It wasn't easy," Elise acknowledged, "but it became necessary for my sanity." The revelation of Elise's dual identity sent ripples through Silicon Valley's insular community. When she presented to Horizon's board as Dr. Elise Chen, the stunned recognition that followed, particularly from board members who had witnessed Vincent's dismissive treatment of her at social functions, created an undercurrent of tension that threatened Vincent's leadership position. Publicly, they maintained a united front, with Vincent acknowledging Elise's previously untapped potential in carefully worded press statements. Privately, their marriage entered uncharted territory, a complex renegotiation of power and respect that left both uncertain of their path forward. "The board wants to create a new position," Vincent informed her after a tense executive meeting. "Chief Innovation Officer. They want you." "And how do you feel about that?" Elise asked, watching him carefully. Vincent leaned against their kitchen counter, looking suddenly tired. "Honestly? Humiliated, threatened, proud, confused." He met her gaze directly. "But mostly I feel like a fool for not seeing what was right in front of me all these years." "I tried to show you," Elise said quietly. "You chose not to see." That night, lying awake in separate bedrooms, a new arrangement since the Innovation Awards, Elise contemplated Julian Blackwood's increasingly urgent messages. Lumina still wanted her, regardless of her connection to Horizon. The choice before her was stark: help rebuild Horizon alongside a husband who had only recognized her value when forced to, or start fresh with a company that had valued her from the beginning. As dawn broke, Elise made her decision, one that would determine not just her professional future, but whether there was anything left of her marriage worth salvaging. A new composition rain tapped against the windows of Horizon Technologies' boardroom as 13 people sat in tense silence around the polished mahogany table. On one side, Vincent and the Horizon executive team. On the other, Julian Blackwood and Lumina Labs leadership. And at the head of the table, Elise, the unexpected fulcrum upon which both companies' futures now balanced. "Let me ensure I understand what you're proposing," said Grace Thornton, Horizon's board chairwoman, her gaze fixed on Elise. "Rather than a hostile takeover or a conventional merger, you're suggesting a joint venture focused exclusively on the adaptive learning technology?" "Yes," Elise confirmed, sliding prospectus documents across the table. "Neither company can develop this market independently with the speed required to dominate the sector. Horizon has the client infrastructure but lacks innovation momentum. Lumina has cutting-edge research but lacks scale. Together as equal partners in a separate entity, you could redefine educational technology within 18 months. Vincent studied his wife with a complex mixture of emotions. The past month had stripped away the comfortable illusions of their marriage, revealing painful truths about his dismissiveness and her silent resilience. More disturbingly, it had forced him to recognize how his ego had clouded his business judgment, nearly costing him everything he'd built. "The proposal has merit," Vincent said, surprising everyone who expected him to resist, particularly the governance structure Dr. Chen has outlined. The small emphasis he placed on her professional title wasn't lost on anyone present. Their private conversations had been painful but necessary, laying bare years of accumulated resentments and missed opportunities. Vincent had alternated between defensive anger and genuine remorse as he confronted how systematically he had diminished her. "Julian," Elise turned to the Lumina CEO, "this arrangement preserves both companies' independence while creating a venture that could surpass either individually. Are you prepared to redirect your acquisition strategy toward collaboration?" Julian's calculating gaze moved between Elise and Vincent. "Your proposal is elegant, Dr. Chen, though I admit I had hoped to bring your talents exclusively to Lumina." "My talents," Elise replied with quiet firmness, "are not exclusive to either company in this arrangement. The joint venture would have independent leadership." 3 hours later, after intense negotiation over equity distribution and technology licensing, preliminary agreements were signed. As executives filed out, Vincent remained seated, watching Elise gather her materials. "You could have left," he said when they were alone, taken Julian's offer. "After how I treated you, no one would have blamed you." Elise closed her portfolio before answering. "This wasn't about punishing you, Vincent. It never was. Then what was it about?" "Because I'm still trying to understand how we got here." "It was about finding my voice again." She sat beside him. "And creating something better than either of us could build alone." Vincent nodded slowly. "I've been seeing Dr. Powell," he said, referencing the therapist Elise had suggested. "He's helping me understand some things about my need for control, about why I felt threatened by your intelligence instead of valuing it." He reached for her hand cautiously. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you know I'm trying to change." "I know," Elise said, neither accepting nor rejecting his touch. "That's why I'm still here." 2 months later, the technology media buzzed with news of Horizon Lumina Educational Ventures' launch. At the press conference, Vincent introduced Elise as the architectural mind behind the joint venture, publicly acknowledging her contributions in ways that still felt foreign but increasingly natural. "And now," Vincent concluded, "I'll turn the presentation over to our Chief Strategy Officer, Dr. Elise Chen Whitley, who will outline the technical roadmap." As Elise took the podium, the room's attention shifted fully to her. Vincent watched from the side, remembering how often he had interrupted or spoken for her in the past. The journey from that man to who he was becoming had been humbling and painful, a necessary dismantling of ego that continued daily. Their marriage remained a work in progress. They had begun couples therapy alongside Vincent's individual sessions, slowly rebuilding trust through difficult conversations and changed behaviors. Some nights still ended in separate bedrooms, but others brought tentative reconnection as they rediscovered each other as equals. After the presentation, at a small celebration with both companies' leadership teams, Julian approached Elise with a champagne toast. "To the woman who outmaneuvered us all," he said with respectful admiration. "I still think you should be running the whole operation." "In time, perhaps," Elise replied with a confidence that now came naturally. "For now, I'm exactly where I need to be." Later that evening, Elise found Vincent on their home terrace, gazing at the valley lights below. She joined him at the railing, comfortable in the silence that settled between them. "I spoke with Naomi Washington today," she said eventually. "Stanford has offered me an adjunct professorship. 1 lecture per week, graduate-level adaptive systems." Vincent turned to her, his face illuminated by moonlight. "You should take it. You're a brilliant teacher." "I already accepted," Elise said. a statement rather than a question, one of many small but significant shifts in their dynamic. Vincent nodded, then hesitated before speaking again. I found something in storage yesterday. Your original business plan. The one you showed me when we first married. The clean energy marketplace concept? He met her eyes directly. It was visionary. I was wrong to discourage you. Yes, you were, Elise agreed simply. I know it's years late, but if you ever wanted to revisit it, I've been refining it, Elise interrupted gently. The joint venture structure we created could serve as a model. Vincent smiled, recognizing the familiar determination in her voice, the one he'd chosen to ignore for too long. I'd like to hear about it. When you're ready to share. As they stood side by side, not touching but present with each other in a way they hadn't been for years, Elise realized they were composing something new, a relationship built not on dominance and submission, but on mutual respect and recognition. The quiet wife had found her voice, and the domineering husband had learned to listen. Their harmony remained imperfect, notes still occasionally discordant. But the melody they were creating held promise neither had imagined possible just months before. I'm ready now, Elise said, turning toward him. If you're ready to really hear it. Vincent nodded, his expression open in a way she'd rarely seen. I'm listening, and this time he truly was.